Hey guys, today we're going to be going a little bit more in depth in genetic variation because of sexual reproduction. So last time we talked about meiosis and we talked about the different steps, and we talked about how it goes from one diploid cell to 4 non-identical haploid cells. So today we're going to talk about why that's so significant. Okay, so I really liked this quote and I wanted to share it with you. An important idea for you to understand is that new alleles arise by changes in the DNA or mutation. But genetic diversity occurs when that deck is dealt. Genes are simply reshuffled. So there are 3 ways that sexually reproducing organisms reshuffle the deck. So today we're going to be talking about how that occurs. So we're going to be talking about how each of those haploid daughter cells that are non-identical have different combinations of genes that will eventually lead to different offspring. That's why, unless you're an identical twin, you don't look exactly like your brother or your sister. All right, so first let's look at the value of sexual reproduction. It introduces genetic variation by different modes, okay? And the first one I want to talk about is genetic recombination. That genetic recombination is looking at independent assortment of. If you look here, this is during metaphase 1 when the homologous chromosomes are lining up at the equator. And you can see that that can happen in different combinations. So in this first example, we see that all of the blue, which I would assume would be the paternal chromosomes, are lined up on one side, and all of the red maternal sister chromatids are lined up on the other side. But right here you can see that we've got 2 of the paternal sister chromatids on this side and 1 of the paternal chromatids on the opposite side. And you can see here we have a different combination. The first paternal chromatid is here, and the other 2 paternal sister chromatids are on the other side, and you really can get any genetic combination. So by them being arranged differently on either side of that equator during metaphase 1, where they're all lined up, when they pull apart, automatically you are assigning different genetic combinations to those cells. So what we have here is independent assortment is the random alignment of homologous chromosomes in metaphase 1. You get lots of different combinations, and of course the more chromosomes you have, the higher genetic combination you could possibly get. Crossing over is the second way that we get genetic variation during the whole meiosis process. And remember, we talked about crossing over happens in prophase 1, where the homologous chromosomes come together, and wherever those same genes touch, they actually switch genetic information. So this is a mixing of alleles throughout homologous chromosomes. And remember, homologous chromosomes mean the same chromosome type, even though they might have slightly genetic different information on them. So they would be a chromosome that might have information for hair type, hair color, or eye color. Well, those both have the same information for hair and eye color, but the information contained within those chromosomes, the alleles, might be different. Okay, so one might say blonde hair while the other might say dark brunette hair. They're still the same type of chromosome, which is why we call them homologous. The other way we could possibly get genetic variation is random fertilization. So fertilization, we said, is when the sperm cell fuses with the egg cell. Well, most of the time, we don't choose which sperm cell fertilizes the egg cell. It's random. It's whichever one gets there first is the one that gets chosen. So which sperm fertilizes which egg? It's whichever egg is released, whichever sperm gets there first. And because of all these things, these are all ladybugs, they're all the same population, but they all look very different. This is what drives evolution. This is what drives the natural selection, or those that survive within their environment and pass on their own genes. All right, so looking a little bit closer, independent assortment of chromosomes Meiosis introduces genetic variation here, okay? The gametes of offspring don't have the same combination of genes as the gametes from their parents. So what that's saying is my gametes do not look the same as my mom's gametes, okay? Because I have genes that have been introduced from my mom and my dad that I inherited, and then my gametes are going to have different combinations of those. Excuse the sound effects on this one. So here is an egg from mom and a sperm cell from dad, and here's our fertilized egg cell, our offspring, that has a different combination. And then their gametes are going to also have different gene combinations. So you can see here, this gamete cell has 1 blue chromosome and 2 red ones. This one has 2 blue chromosomes and 1 red one, just showing you variation. Because of random assortment, we get 2 to the 23rd power because we have 23 we have 23 types of chromosomes, right? And there are 2 of each. So because of that, we get 2 to the 23rd possible different genetic combinations in our gametes. So if you do the math, that's over 8 million different gametes that you are producing. All right, so let's look really a little bit more closely at crossing over. Crossing over creates completely new combinations of traits on each chromosome. And really, it just depends on where those homologous chromosomes touch is where they're going to be sharing or exchanging their genetic combination. So if they touch more at the top, it's going to be a little bit of difference. If they touch more towards the middle, it's going to be a higher percentage of those genes that are being exchanged. Because of this, really it creates an infinite variety of gametes. There are infinite possibilities of how these could be exchanged and how they could create variation. And then variation from random fertilization, whichever sperm is produced, or whichever sperm gets to the one egg that is produced first is the one that's going to fertilize the egg cell. So like I said, typically it is random which one is chosen. So any 2 parents will produce a zygote with over 7 trillion possible diploid combinations. And we got that number because each parent has 23 pairs of chromosomes in their diploid cells, which then are reduced during meiosis. And 1 parent times 1 parent, and we have over 7 trillion possible combinations. So you could have 70 trillion. You could have 70 trillion offspring, yikes, and the likelihood that any of those will be exactly the same, 1 out of 70 trillion. So sexual reproduction allows us to maintain both genetic similarities, but it also allows us to maintain differences as well. Okay, so all of us have genes for eye color and hair color and melanin, which is what produces our skin tone and what tells our growth hormones that need to be produced, and a ton of other genes that make us who we are. But all of those genes are similar to each other. The difference is the sequence of DNA that's in that gene that says exactly what that gene has in it. So if you see here are the Baldwin brothers, you can tell that they're related. They all have very similar features, but they have their distinct differences as well. Here are the Jonas brothers. Again, you can tell they're all related. They all have their distinct features. And here is, I don't know if you know most of who these are. I'm sure you know who Charlie Sheen is. But here's Martin Sheen, his dad. Here's Charlie Sheen, and this is Martin Sheen's other son, Emilio Estevez. They are half brothers. But you can see that they all have similar traits that they share, even though they have distinct differences as well. So that is sexual reproduction and how it creates variability. These are all definite bonuses of sexual reproduction over asexual reproduction. Because remember, in asexual reproduction, you don't get variation like this. So I would say as far as that goes, winning! So that is genetic variation in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please make sure that you ask in class. It's kind of a difficult concept, and I went over it very briefly, but I know you can get it, and we'll talk about it some more as time goes. Have a nice one.